Hi, I'm Daniel, and this is Chris, and we're going to talk about nationalism and imperialism. Okay, so before we start talking about anything else, let's start by defining nationalism. A nation-state is essentially the ultimate product of nationalism. This consists of the nation part and the state part. The state part is a defined territory united under a centralized government. Then there's the nation part, which includes a national currency and national language, a large national military, national education and transportation, and a country that acts as an economic whole. And these nation-states were brought together by the power of nationalism. Now, nationalism was all over Europe at the time. In some cases, it was breaking people away from large groups, as in the Greeks and the Ottoman Empire. But in this case, which we'll be speaking about today, is going to be unifying. We're going to be taking a look at the Italian unification. So the Italian unification began in 1848 when Giuseppe Garibaldi tried and failed to create an entire united Italy, united under a single democratic government. Soon afterwards followed a man by the name of Camillo di Cavour, an Italian aristocrat and politician. He also wanted to unite Italy under a single government, and he was quite successful. This was because he employed the strategy known as realpolitik. Realpolitik essentially says that a government should look at its situation, its power, and the power of those around it realistically, and then based on that, pursue the interests of your own nation-state by any means. That meant often taking advantage of whoever was around you. In order to unite all of the Italian provinces, Cavour would have to gain control of both Rome and Venetia, which were under Austria's control. To achieve this, he made various alliances and betrayals with Prussia, France, and even Garibaldi himself. Through political exploitation on an international scale, Cavour was able to defeat Austria, gain control of Rome and Venetia, and unite all of Italy. Like Italy, Germany also consisted of a bunch of fragmented states, which was subsequently united through the power of realpolitik and a man by the name of Otto von Bismarck. Bismarck was a very influential power in Prussia, which contained the northern German states. The southern German states, on the other hand, were very Catholic and against unification with the northern, warmongering Protestant states. Now, Bismarck, like Cavour, was a very devious politician. First, he gathered up a large Prussian army and prepared for battle. To bring in the southern provinces, Bismarck decided he would start a war in which the southern provinces and the northern provinces would come together in nationalistic sentiment to fight France in a war. And since there was actually no reason for a war at the time, he started it by forging a note from a French ambassador which insulted the Prussian king. Prussia wanted to go to war with France, and the southern provinces quickly rushed to their side. After the Germans won, and the southern provinces were convinced, Bismarck declared the formation of the German Empire, or the Second Reich, in January of 1871. Now that we've explained nationalism, we can show how nationalism paved the way for imperialism, which we'll talk about now.
Let's start off by talking about imperialism. The definition of imperialism is the seizure of a country or territory by a stronger country. What we're going to talk about is the scramble for Africa. We're talking about the Europeans, and they did what they did best, was dominate. They went into Africa, and Africa at this time was divided into hundreds of ethnic and linguistic groups, and Europeans were just trying to get land. But the African armies were able to keep the Europeans out of Africa for almost 400 years. But the Europeans were able to get better technology, and with the use of the steam engine, they were able to get through the rapids and cataracts of the around Africa. Now, Congo actually sparked some interest. The Dutch were the first to claim land in Africa by claiming the country of Congo, and it was because of this that all the European countries, or at least most of them, started to claim parts of Africa. But they had to find a way to divide it somehow, and they did this by the meeting at the Berlin Conference.
Pretty much to casually lay down the rules. Now, three groups clashed over South Africa, the Africans, Dutch, and British. The British quickly defeated the Africans because of their technology, but it was much harder to defeat the Dutch. This was the first modern war, and it was called the Boer War. The British ended up winning, but let the Dutch stay there under British control.
Now we're going to talk about the forms of imperialism. First, you have colony, which is a country or a territory governed internally by a foreign power. Secondly, protectorate, a country or a territory with its own internal government, but under the control of an outside power, much more lenient. Next is the sphere of influence, which is an area in which an outside power claims exclusive investment or trading privileges. An example of this is Liberia, which was under the sphere of influence of the United States. Lastly is economic imperialism, which is an independent but less developed country controlled by private business interests rather than other governments. The interest with the British in India started when the British East Indian Company set up trading posts in Bombay, Madras, and Calcutta. But the British actually started to slowly take over the India Company. The Indians didn't like this, and because the British were trying to convert everyone to Christianity. What really set them off was when they found that their rifles were greased with beef and pork fat, which their religion was completely against. They started rebelling, and the conflict over the control of India continued to develop between the Indians and the British in the following years. Now we're going to talk about Southeast Asia. Like Africa, the Europeans wanted even more land, so they went to Southeast Asia. The Dutch took control with their use of the East India Company. The British took over the Malayan Peninsula. French took over the Indochina. But one country that stayed was Siam. They remained independent because they used their country as a neutral zone between France and Britain. Now we're going to talk about U.S. imperialism in the Pacific Islands. They acquired the Philippine Islands, Puerto Rico, and Guam as a result of the Spanish-American War. But there was another island, Hawaii, that they were also interested in because of its port to China and East India. Pretty much what happened was Hawaii needed materials, and the United States wanted Hawaii, so the Republic of Hawaii was annexed by the United States.